Deadly winter storm pounds U.S. East Coast with heavy snow, sleet and rain. It's a heartbreaker. Snow drives northeast to the limit, canceling more than 5,000 flights, shutting down D.C. and leaving salt supplies running out as 15 inches fall overnight. Winter storm has started lumbering up the East Coast and is expected to dump 6 inches of snow on New York, 8 inches on Boston and 9 inches on Portland, Maine into Friday. Utility workers in the South are scrambling to return power to more than 500,000 people without power. Traffic snarled in North Carolina on Wednesday due to snowfall and ice in scenes reminiscent of Atlanta during the last storm, but in Atlanta roads were empty as residents heeded warnings this time around. Schools and federal government offices were shuttered on Thursday. At least 12 people have lost their lives, mostly in car wrecks in Texas, Mississippi, North Carolina and Georgia. More heartbreaking weather began bearing down on the Northeast on the eve of Valentine's Day, dumping more than a foot of snow on cities, grounding thousands of flights and shutting down Washington, D.C. Already the snowstorm, which pummeled southern states on Wednesday, has cancelled more than 5,000 flights nationwide, left more than 500,000 people without power in the Deep South and killed at least 12. For the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, the heavy weather was the latest in an unending drumbeat of storms that have depleted cities' salt supplies and caused school systems to run out of snow days. Baltimore awoke to 15 inches of snow, measured in Pimlico, while nearby in Washington, D.C., the city all but shut down after 11 inches accumulated in some areas overnight as more large, fluffy flakes continued to fall throughout Thursday morning. Federal offices and the city's 2 main airports were closed, and streets were nearly deserted during the normally frantic commute. The few people braving the chill trudged through the snow on sidewalks, hopping over piles built up at intersections. Further north, Boston could see 8 inches on Thursday, while New York City could be hit with 6. The Philadelphia area could get a foot or more, and Portland, Maine, may see 8 or 9 inches. More snow will also coat New Jersey, which has seen 11 separate snowfalls this season. North Jersey has had a total of 42.5 inches of snow according to gauges at Newark Liberty International Airport, which makes this the 6th snowiest season since official records started in 1931. Louis Gray, 52, a porter in Washington, D.C., started his workday shoveling about 7 a.m. Gray said he normally takes the bus to work, but it wasn't running, so he got a ride. He said he'd stay home after work and watch TV, then hopefully the bus will be running again. In Frederick, Maryland, Corey Cheeks worked his pickup through a 4-foot plow pile only to find the road at the end of his hotel parking lot still blocked by snow. The Fredericksburg, Virginia resident was reluctantly preparing for a day of online training, convinced he could have driven 30 miles to Rockville for a face-to-face session if his supervisors hadn't cancelled it. It's a very powdery snow. It's not very heavy at all, Cheeks said. I could go to work right now, even in my truck. It might not be the smartest idea, but it could be done. In the South, armies of utility workers labored to turn the lights and the heat back on for hundreds of thousands of Southerners. There was also havoc on the roads in the Deep South, which remained a world of ice-laden trees and driveways after several unusual days of sleet and snow. Snow was forecast to stop falling and temperatures to rise in most of the state by late morning, but ice remained a concern. Drivers in and around Raleigh, North Carolina, became snarled Wednesday in huge traffic jams and abandoned cars in scenes reminiscent of motorist woes in Atlanta during a storm 2 weeks earlier. For some on slick, snow-covered interstates in the snow-covered state, commutes that should take minutes lasted hours after many got on the highways just as soon as snow and sleet began at midday. But in Atlanta, many streets were eerily quiet this storm, with drivers heeding dire warnings to stay off the roads, although state troopers say they worked more than 200 crashes in Georgia. And in South Carolina, more accustomed to occasional hurricanes, some could only relate the damage from ice-snapped tree limbs to that of bygone Hurricane Hugo. Even normally balmy Myrtle Beach, cars were coated in thick ice that also frosted palm trees and kiddie rides by the shore. "I hate driving on this," grumbled South Carolina resident Mindy Taylor, 43, on her way for rock salt, kiddie litter or anything else to melt the ice. "Hopefully it'll warm up by the weekend and it will all melt. I'm ready for spring." In Alabama, forecasters gleefully spoke of weekend temperatures reaching the 60s after inches of snow or sleet in its northern parts. Ice combined with wind gusts up to 30 miles per hour snapped tree limbs and power lines. About 350,000 homes and businesses lost electricity in Georgia. South Carolina had about 245,000 outages, and North Carolina around 100,000. Some people could be in the dark for days. As he did for parts of Georgia, President Barack Obama declared a disaster in South Carolina, opening the way for federal aid. There, a winter storm warning remained in effect, but the wintry mix was forecast to wrap up Thursday morning. Some Southerners who 2 weeks ago reveled in the so-called snow jam sounded tired this time of sleet and ice encasing highways, trees and even the tombstones of a cemetery replete with Confederate graves. Charter school teacher Bethany Lanier, 32, was walking in a mostly empty square in the Atlanta suburb of Decatur with Lindsay Futterman, 30, as they debated whether to get a drink at a pub. If classes are cancelled Friday, the charter school students will have missed 9 days of school. To make up days, administrators have cancelled a 3-day break. "Now, we're out because we have cabin fever," Lanier said as Futterman added, "It's kind of annoying now." Many Southerners took to makeshift sleds on the ice and snow, with at least 7 people hospitalized in sledding accidents just in Georgia. 4 people were hurt sledding in a kayak that crashed into a pole, said Fire Chief Ricky Pruitt in Cleveland, Georgia. One victim suffered leg injuries, another was knocked unconscious and lost several teeth, and the other 2 refused treatment, he said. 3 people were killed when an ambulance careened off an icy West Texas road and caught fire. On Tuesday, 4 people died in weather-related traffic accidents in North Texas, including a Dallas firefighter who was knocked from an I-20 ramp and fell 50 feet. In Mississippi, 2 traffic deaths were reported as well as in North Carolina. Also, a Georgia man apparently died of hypothermia after spending hours outside during the storm, a coroner said. In Atlanta, which was caught badly unprepared by the last storm, area schools announced even before the first drop of sleet fell that they would be closed on Tuesday and Wednesday. Schools were also closed for Thursday. Many businesses in the corporate capital of the South shut down, too. North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory urged people to charge their cell phones and find batteries for radios and flashlights because the storm could bring nearly a foot of snow in places such as Charlotte. "Stay smart. Don't put your stupid hat on at this point in time. Protect yourself. Protect your family. Protect your neighbors," McCrory said. In a warning issued early Wednesday, the National Weather Service called the storm across the South catastrophic, crippling, paralyzing, choose your adjective. Eli Jacks, a meteorologist with National Weather Service, said forecasters use words like catastrophic sparingly. "Sometimes we want to tell them, hey, listen, this warning is different. This is really extremely dangerous and it doesn't happen very often," Jacks said. This kind of language was first used in May 19, 1999 for a tornado in Moore, Oklahoma. Forecasters called it a tornado emergency to make sure the public knew it was not a typical tornado. "I think 3/4 of an inch of ice anywhere would be catastrophic," Jacks said. But the Atlanta area and other parts of the South are particularly vulnerable because there are so many trees and limbs hanging over power lines. When the ice builds up on them, limbs snap and fall, knocking out power. There is no doubt that this is one of Mother Nature's worst kinds of storms that can be inflicted on the South, and that is ice. It is our biggest enemy, Georgia Governor Nathan Deal said. The winter storm could bring a thick layer of ice and cause widespread power outages for days, potentially to millions of people. Delta, which operates its busiest hub in Atlanta, canceled more than 1,400 flights nationwide across Tuesday and Wednesday. U.S. Airways, which operates a major hub out of Charlotte, canceled more than 330 flights on Tuesday and another 540 on Wednesday. But, if the storm comes anywhere near to predictions, it is expected that up to 10,000 flights will be cancelled through till Friday, when the storm is expected to disperse. So bad are the backlogs in hotels across Atlanta and the South that Delta is allowing its staff to sleep in their planes because they cannot find them rooms to stay in.